Namaskar, this is my 58th lecture, and it's best if you hear this in conjunction with lecture 39 and 56, where I talk about racism and jihad. This lecture is going to be a little bit complex, and you have to be patient and listen to it till the end. Otherwise, it won't make sense, because here I'm going to talk about why Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, is the main antithesis of Islam, not Christianity or Judaism. Whatever is happening politically, that's more political. But ideologically, this is more an antithesis. And when I say antithesis, I don't mean enemy. But this is more the antithesis that they have to destroy in order for them to establish what I said in the previous lecture, Darul Islam. Why? We have to understand the history. And since I don't have a PowerPoint, I'll go through it and I'll show you some slides and some maps. All right, we have to go back and delve a little bit into the Prophet's life. Prophet Muhammad was born in 570 in the Arabian desert of Mecca. So where was Mecca? This is what I'm going to show to all of you. It's here. On the one hand was Syria. On the west side, on the east side were Persia and the Red Sea. Syria and what is Syria now and Palestine, and it's a very lucrative trade route. So a lot of people used to gather there. So that's where he was born. Who are the people in control? The Quraysh tribes. There are tribes in Mecca who are in Arabia who are in control of Mecca, and they were traders. They had lucrative spice trade since battle in parts of the world. They also were diverted from the dangerous sea routes, and they controlled that area. Why is this important? Because Quraysh tribe is the tribe in which the Prophet was born. The Byzantine Empire had previously controlled the Red Seas, but piracy have been increasing. And so the Meccan route was their trade. Now the previous route, which ran through the Persian Gulf via the Tigris and Euphrates River, was also threatened by exploitation from the Sassanid Empire, which was disrupted by the Lakhmids, the Ghassanian, and the Roman-Persian War. What is the history of Mecca? Mecca's prominence which surpassed Petra, which is a very important place in Jordan still now, and Palmyra. Why? Again, because of the trade routes. Now, for us, two things are important. The Quraysh tribes, how do they get ascendance? And the religion. It was a religion of Christianity, some Jews, but mainly their own polytheistic indigenous religion. And what was their main temple? The temple of Hubal. What is the temple of Hubal? Nowadays, we know it as the Kaaba. So, let's look at the main god, Hubal. Who is Hubal? Well, according to one interpretation, Hubal was derived, the Hubal god, the most important god of the Meccans, was derived from the god Baal of the Canaanites, the Phoenician Canaanites. Who is Baal? He was the god of fertility, lightning, and prosperity. And because he was the god of fertility, he had horns and bull. And also, very interestingly, the crescent moon was there. So, he was the Meccan god. The Baal was the god of fertility. And I'm going to show you a picture of Baal. See the horns on his head, which depicts the bull, because the bull can impregnate a lot of cow and can give you the cattle. And also the moon is there. So maybe it's very close to our concept, the Indic concept of the Shiva. Now, he was taken as Hubal, and the temple of Hubal, which formed the main center of art, commerce, and religion, which is now the Kaaba, was where the Quraysh kingdom flourished, the Quraysh tribe flourished. Who was the first one? The first Quraysh was the Quraysh bin Kilab, 450 CE. The first Quraysh to assume the position of importance was a man named Quraysh bin Kilab, in alliance with the tribe supported by the Byzantine Empire. Always tribes have to be supported by a greater power, deposing the reigning Quza tribe and establishing the Quraysh leadership in Mecca. There was a small temple, but they rebuilt it, and the author here is saying they rebuilt the Kaaba, but it was probably still not called Kaaba, it was called the Temple of Hubal, on a grander scale, from the goddess of, who was in that temple? The god Hubal. See, the crescent moon is still there. That's why some people say it's very close to Shiva in Hinduism. And most importantly, the three goddesses who are three daughters of Hubal. Al-Lat, the first one, Al-Uzzat and Al-Manat. And Al-Manat had a different temple in between Mecca and Medina. So, the Prophet's childhood, his parents had a lot of hardship, although they were the elites of Mecca, but they had hardship. And he was born actually after his father Abdullah died, when his mother Amina was 6 months old. And at that time, children were given to their foster's mother to breastfeed from the elite class. So she was given to a woman named Halima, who was a peasant woman who took the son Prophet from the mother Amina and to be raised with his son. But when the son was 3, he brought him back and told his mother a supernatural story. And what is the story? That 3 people came dressed in white, and they opened the little child Prophet Muhammad's belly, and they searched for something. And this was later described by Allah in the consecration of Muhammad by wiping out his sins, Quran 94, 1-2. So it's there in the Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari. To corroborate this claim, Muhammad alleged return to a new mark between his shoulder blades. So these are the marks of being a prophet, according to Halima. All these have been verified by the Quran in some or the other of the ayats. Now, so his mother raised him with good care. Then at some point, he took him to Medina, which was 210 miles north of Mecca, and about 10 to 12 days journey, because at that time, that's what you had. The Kharaji tribe of Medina was related to his great-grandmother. So there was Mecca, and then there was Medina, 210 miles away. And something unfortunate happened when they were returning. His mother died, and he was only 6 years old. So he was brought up by his grandfather Abdul al-Muttalib, and later by his uncle Abu Talib, whose son Ali was also his son-in-law later on. Now, he is very much a polytheist. He is very much what monotheism would call a pagan person, and very religious. He tended and grazed cattle and camels, and an elderly man called Waraka bin Nawfal saw his good skills and reported him to a widow who was 45 years old called Khadija. So said that he was good in caring all the cattle. So Khadija employed him and eventually proposed marriage to him. He was just 25 years old, and he got married to Khadija. And something happened after this marriage. Waraka bin Nawfal, who was an elderly cousin of his wife Khadija, was very much influenced by the Christian monotheists who were also there in Mecca. They were a minority, but they were there. And he influenced both Khadija and especially Prophet Muhammad, and his influence inspired Muhammad to go in a nearby Mount Hira to go and meditate. But what's interesting, there was also a small monotheistic trend in the Meccan religion called Hanafi. That later evolved into one of the jurisprudence in Islam called the Hanafi schools. But here for us, the more important thing is he got inspired and he went there. And there probably he received some visions, revelations of God. And he started preaching about this new vision, the revelations, to the polytheist idolaters of Mecca. After 15 years, he could, at the age of 40, Prophet Muhammad claimed to have heard voices from an unknown someone instructing him. He said this to his wife Khadija and Waraka bin Naufal, who inspired him and who said that Gabriel was giving him the new religion. It's the same religion that he will bear from Moses, etc. So this is where the change is happening because of the influence of this person. All right. So in the Ali Bukhari, the Quranic dialogue 4605, Waraka said that you adopt this new religion. This is your mission in life, to spread this and preach it. So what is his mission from now on? To convert every polytheist into this monotheistic new religion given to him by God. He heard those voices by his messenger Gabriel. But that's not the one that's more important for us, is the symbol of this polytheistic religion. What was the symbol? The temple of Hubal, which is the Kaaba. And that somehow had to be conquered. But what happened is they were a pretty strong people, the Quraysh tribe, his own tribe of Mecca, and they were still in the polytheistic verses. So he was not very good at converting them. He converted like a few, but he couldn't convert many of them. Pagans of Mecca, he told them to follow his creed, but they were not willing to, because they were very devoted to the god Hubal. So there are several verses in the Quran which says that he was not safe in Mecca because the polytheists were persecuting him. They are also saying there are verses in the Quran which says that some of the people, because they were persecuted, they had to flee. And in 1606 CE, 82 disciples of Muhammad fled to Abyssinia, Ethiopia, where the Christian king gave them shelter. Then 617 CE, social blockade and excommunicated him. These are all question marks, but they're there. I will quote some thing from the Quran 3:94-97. Whoever shall invent a falsehood after that concerning Allah, such will be wrongdoers. Say, Allah speaketh truth. So follow the religion of Abraham the upright. He was not of the idolaters. Lo, the first sanctuary, Kaaba, appointed for mankind, was at Mecca, blessed place, a guidance for the people. Now, what are these verses saying really, and why are these important for us? It is clearly saying that your main enemy are the polytheists of Mecca. It's not about Hinduism, but we can always transfer this, and we'll see that later. So, and you have to destroy that temple, not destroy it, but convert it into the house of Allah, who's the only one true God. So 619 CE, Muhammad went to Taif in search, which is in between. Taif was a city in between Mecca and Medina. And there he got some 100 to 150 converted. This is all from Ibn Ishq. He's the author, a historian. He said he tried to preach his new religion in this place called Taif, who are also against the tribe Quraysh. See, it's also political. So it's a religion, political together. Now, 620 CE, he made a pilgrimage to Medina with 6 of the converts. And what we have is the first oak of Kaaba. He met 12 men on his way to Medina who already converted and who made a pledge to him that they will support him when he goes to Medina. Muhammad met his Meccan disciple Musab ibn Emir, and with them instructing them, the new converts to their new faith. 622, he relocated to Yathrib or Medina. At that time it was called Yathrib. Who were the most important people in Medina at that time? The Jewish community. They were very wealthy. So in 622, 75 citizens of Medina, 75 men and 2 women were accompanied Mushab to Mecca and held a secret meeting at Aqaba region. During that meeting, Muhammad's uncle Al-Abbas, who had accompanied him to the secret rendezvous, announced his desire to relocate in Medina because in Mecca he was not welcome because there were still polytheists, they won't convert. Al-Bara, Medinan convert, took his hand and said, "By him who sent you, which is Allah, the truth will protect you, thus it will protect our woman." The pledge of Medina converts were known as Ansars or helpers. Muhammad, his disciple Ali, son of Abu Talib, later his son-in-law. So when Muhammad went, Ali, who is the son of Abu Talib, who brought him up when his mother passed away and who later married his daughter and became his son-in-law. His friend Abu Bakr and his little daughter Aisha, who was engaged to Muhammad because his wife passed away. But here I want to mention something. When he was going to Medina, there were people who pledged allegiance to him, saying that they will help him to convert people in Medina. They're the helpers. They were called the Ansars. When we hear the word Ansar, like the Ansarullahs in Bangladesh and so on, that's what it means. The Ansars are the helpers who would establish Islam amongst the polytheists. Now, when he went to relocated in Medina, he made a constitution and it had 2 clauses. I'm going to read out those clauses. No believer shall be put to death for the blood of an infidel, neither shall any infidel be supported against Muslims. So he already made a distinction between unbelievers, kafirs and Muslims. The polytheist of Medina shall not take the property or person of Quraysh under his protection, nor shall intervene against Muslims. So to convince Muhammad's unwilling disciples to act violently, because some were not willing to act violently against the Meccans. Why? Because these are all their own relatives and kins. So whenever there's a problem, ethical dilemma, a Quranic verse comes in. Allah said, it's revealed to the Prophet, and then he gives this message to others. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you. Do not transgress limits, for Allah loveth not transgressor. Quran 2:190. Slay them whenever ye catch them and turn them out from where they have turned you out, for tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. Quran 2:191. And fight them on until there are no more tumult or oppression. Then prevail justice and faith in Allah. So what are they doing here? We have to understand this. The whole fight, in the way it's put in the Quran, is a just fight, almost a dharma yuddha, that you have to set up the kingdom of Allah and banish and kill all the polytheists and infidels, kafirs. In February 624, Muhammad set a band of 8 raiders against the command. Now, here I will talk about something which is very important for us. I'm going to talk about Ghazwa. What is Ghazwa? Raiding, which is what he did. What is raiding? Raiding is backing up and then jumping on another tribe till you have weakened them, and then, of course, declaring a war. Ghazwa or raiding, to capture the Kaaba. That is the ultimate one. February 624, Muhammad sent a band of 8 raiders under the command of Abdullah ibn Jashad to raid a Meccan caravan. It was a sacred month and fighting was prohibited. But again, Allah gave an injunction. Fighting therein is a grave offense, but graver is in the sight of Allah to prevent access to the path, to deny him, to prevent access to the sacred mosque and drive out the members. Here, mosque means the temple of Hubal. So Allah gave that decree, although it was a festival month like Diwali or something in Mecca. March 624, the Battle of Badr. Now this was a turning point in his march towards Mecca and occupying the temple. Why? Because the person who was leading the Meccan people in war against him is Abu Sufyan, who was also one of his father-in-laws. And he heard that the Meccans, led by Abu Sufyan, was coming to attack him. So what he did is, he didn't have enough army. He went and hid in an oasis called Badar, and he dried up all the oasis, the ponds, except one, so that his army can drink that water, and the rest he filled with sand. Abu Sufyan got the news that he was waiting to jump on them. So he went in another route. He went in a different route along the Red Sea, while Muhammad waited near Badr. Now, the large army was sent to defeat him. There were 10,000, and these people were the Prophet just had 3,000. But what happened is they were thirsty, and there was no water. And so they were thirsty, they were defeated, and more people in their side was killed. So it was a great victory for him towards the occupation of Mecca and the temple. Then the Battle of Uhud, March 625, 3,000 Meccan fighters under the command of Abu Sufyan. Remember, they're still not Muslims, they're not converted. Fought with 700 Muslims, and the Muslims suffered heavy losses. April 627, Abu Sufyan appealed to the Jewish community to join hands with them, because they are also opposed to the Muslims in Mecca, because he was trying to force to convince them. The Battle of Uhud is very interesting. He would have lost because there were more people on the other side, because the Jewish of the Medinan Jewish joined with Abu Sufyan, but a Persian convert named Salman gave him an idea. In Persia, the way they hindered the enemy, they dug trenches so that the enemy cannot enter. And that's what he did, listening to this Persian convert. The Abu Sufyan and his Meccan Arabs, they didn't know about this strategy, so they couldn't go over, and they lost. And after he retreated, he killed most of the Jews who joined hand with Abu Sufyan. Okay, March 628, Muhammad marched towards his ancestral city, and there he laid in wait, which means Mecca, to occupy it, and mostly to occupy the temple of Hubal or Kaaba. 1300 to 1525 armed soldiers during a lesser pilgrimage or Umrah. So he waited there. Now when Abu Sufyan heard it, a messenger came and said, what happened? He said, no, we are not coming to attack you. We are just coming to, for a pilgrimage of Umrah. Because they were still, still part of that polytheistic Meccan culture. In the meantime, Uthman, who was Muhammad's son-in-law, went to Mecca to do a treaty. But when he was not returning, they said that we will kill all of the Meccans, because they must have killed him. This is called the Pledge of the Tree. But Uthman returned, and they made a treaty of Hudaybiyah, so that he won't attack. But what Prophet Muhammad did is he broke the treaty, and that was the final attack. I'm reading that. Abu Bashir, a convert from Mecca, killed a Quraysh violating the treaty, because the treaty was they won't kill or attack each other. He went from raiding brigands of 70 to engaging in all Meccan caravans, and the caravans ultimately begged him to save the lives of the kings. So they said that since you attacked us and we cannot defend ourselves, please save our lives. And he retreated. But 2 years after that, he gathered 10,000 soldiers and he marched. This was the final fall of the temple of Hubal. I'm reading. Abu Sufyan, who is he? He is a leader of the Quraysh tribe, a polytheist, a pagan, and a leader of the Meccan people. The temple of Hubal, which is the most sacred place of the Arabian polytheists, was still there. And the whole point of this final battle, there are many ghazwas before that. The ghazwa of Badr was probably the most decisive, because a handful of Muslims or converts defeated them. But before that also there were some. but they couldn't do much, but this was the final one. Abu Sufyan, who was also one of his father-in-laws, learning of Muhammad's approach, went in the darkness of night to meet Muhammad for persuading him not to attack Mecca. On the way, Abu Sufyan met his brother Al-Abbas, who assured him protection and led him to Muhammad. It was all at night. Omar al-Khattab, later the second caliph, came upon them, and seeing Abu Sufyan, he cried, "Abu Sufyan, the enemy of God." Why? Because he is still a polytheist. He is not a monotheist. "And let me take off your head." Al-Abbas persuaded Omar against this drastic action on the ground of his promise to protect Abu Sufyan, and brought him to Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad asked Al-Abbas to bring him the next morning. When Abu Sufyan was brought back the next morning, the Prophet said, Isn't it time that you recognize that there is no God but Allah? Abu Sufyan never believed that Muhammad was a prophet, and he hesitated. And angry, Muhammad explained, "Woe to you, Abu Sufyan, isn't it time they recognize that I am the apostle of God?" To us, Abu Sufyan answered, "As to that, I still have some doubt." Seeing Abu Sufyan lie in immediate danger, Al-Abbas quickly intervened, forcefully telling him, "Submit and testify that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the apostle of God, before you lose your head or are beheaded." Abu Sufyan had no option but to comply. Al-Abbas then requested Muhammad to do something for Abu Sufyan's people. To this, Muhammad says, since now he has accepted Islam. So now the leader has fallen, he has accepted Islam. Muhammad says, okay, he who enters Abu Sufyan's house is safe. What does that mean? He who converts is safe. He who locks his door is safe. And he who enters the mosque, the new temple, it's no longer a temple, it is going to be a mosque now. On returning to Mecca, Abu Sufyan explained to his people about the futility of opposing Muhammad's advancement into their city. He has 10,000 people and they're losing the battle. Famously, he said, "Aslim taslam," accept Islam, which means become a Muslim if you want to be saved. This is repeated over and over again. If you go through Noah Khalid, it's the same thing. The next morning, an army marched into Mecca. One recalcitrant group of Meccans who had fallen on the way of Khalid ibn Walid's army show a meek resistance, but they were all slaughtered by Prophet's army. Upon capturing Mecca, Muhammad first ordered to capture the temple of Hubal, the Kaaba, and destroy all its ideals, shouting, "Truth has arrived and falsehood perished, for falsehood is by its nature bound to perish," which Allah later quoted as a revealed verse, Quran 17:8. Muhammad stood in the middle of Kaaba, and as he pointed to the idols, passionate and worshipped by the devout Meccans for centuries, with a stick one by one they're smashed into pieces. Muhammad himself destroyed a wooden dove, a deity of the Qurayshis. Now, that's the history. That's the end of the history. What is our point? My whole point here is that the Hindus are more the antithesis than the Jews and Christians. You saw the history. Now let's go to Freud. According to Freud, before Freud, no one knew in the Western world about the unconscious. It's only during Freud, when he did therapy, he started his therapy, he said that when people, what is therapy? Free association. People talk in a relaxing manner. They just lie down in the couch and they say whatever comes to their mind, which is called free association. He said there are gaps and silences. And in those gaps and silences, we think there are things that the ego is not letting them come out. What does that mean? According to Freud, in childhood, we all have traumatic memories. And what we do is, we don't do it unconsciously. They are all repressed and nothing is gone. They just go elsewhere. They're no longer in the conscious mind. They go into the unconscious. But when all the inhibitions are gone, when all the prohibitions of speaking about those repressed traumatic memories are gone, because if they bubble up that someone was raped when she was 2 or 3 years old, they're so traumatic that the ego will break down. So they come out when someone's talking in therapy. Or in dreams. According to Freud, the dream is the royal road to the unconscious. In dreams, they come out. Why? Because in dreams, the ego becomes very weak, because you're asleep. When we are awake, there's our ego functioning, the sense of I, the sense of consolidation. But what comes out in the dreams, he said, they don't come out as real. They come out as displacement and condensation. What does that mean? That they're displaced. You hate X, but it comes out as a person Y whom you hate. You don't even know that person. Or condensation. Two people, say you know two people, X and Y. You like X, you dislike Y, but they will come as a composite person Z, whom you have an ambivalent attitude towards. So this is Freud's individualistic psyche. But also this is, later Jung talked about collective unconscious, generational psyche, it comes out. So what is the first story, the metaphor of the story that we heard, the history? That our first thing is to bring the truth to the polytheist, because they are our first antithesis. If they are there, then God, the truth will never come. So how do we do that? We first of all, we have to, through stages, through all these ghazwas, through all raidings, we have to weaken them. Then we have to convert as much as possible. And then eventually we have to capture the most important seat, in this case, the temple of Hubal, and smash all their ideals. And eventually the truth will be established. Either you convert or die. And this is the same thing that happened with Pandits in Kashmir, in Noakhali, everywhere. So there are enmities between Christians and Jews and so forth. That was there and will come out through history. There were lots of fights with Christians. But this is the original antithesis, the polytheist. And that was my point in saying that the main fight of Islam is with the only one and only ancient culture and polytheist that's living. That's the Hindus. So that's all for today. Please subscribe, like, comment on this. And also in our website and in my Twitter account, you have the genocide course. You can register for that. Thank you. Namaskar.